Imagine a massive semi-truck, right? It's hauling, say, $500,000 worth of specialized auto parts.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a serious load.
Exactly. And it is just cruising down the highway at 65 miles an hour. The
Mm.
engine is humming, the cargo is locked down tight,
Mm.
and everything is just, moving perfectly.
Right. Smooth sailing.
But the minute the tires of that truck cross an invisible line in the dirt, like the border between the United States and Canada or the U.S. and Mexico, it all changes.
It really does.
Yeah, the fundamental laws governing, well, the driver, the engine, the brakes, even the cargo, they instantly change.
Yeah, the physical reality of the truck remains totally identical, yet the regulatory universe it occupies flips upside down in like a fraction of a second.
It's wild. And the modern economy is built on hiding that sudden flip from you. I mean, when you buy a highly specific replacement part for your car online, or you pick up fresh produce in the middle of winter, you just toss it in your cart.
Right, you don't even think about it.
Exactly. You never think about the friction of international borders.
Sure.
But if you look behind the curtain of that simple transaction, you find this incredibly complex, highly fragile machinery.
Very fragile.
Right. It's just a web of invisible forces ensuring those goods actually make it to your doorstep.
And, the deeper you look into the sources provided for this deep dive, the more apparent it becomes that this hidden machinery doesn't just run on its own momentum.
Right. It's not on autopilot.
Exactly. It is actively, constantly engineered by specific agencies trying to prevent, well, basically catastrophic supply chain collapse.
And decoding that machinery is our mission today. We are opening up the source material to examine two massive, largely unseen regulatory frameworks.
The big players behind the scenes.
Yeah, we're looking at Transport Canada and Mexico's Secretariat of Infrastructure, Communications, and Transportation.
Also known as SICT.
All right, SICT. We're going to figure out how these two agencies, while, rarely interacting directly with your daily commute, are essentially manipulating the levers of the massive North American supply chain. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because before we zoom in on the specific agencies, we have to shatter this persistent myth found in the sources.
Oh, the domestic trucking myth.
Yes. A lot of domestic trucking companies operate under this assumption that their universe begins and ends strictly within their own country's borders.
Which is, frankly, a complete fiction in today's economy.
Totally.
Yeah, the reality of North American freight is entirely interconnected. Looking at the data, you cannot isolate a domestic supply chain from the continental web without basically breaking the whole machine.
So to bring this to life, let's use a specific shipment as our guide for this entire conversation.
Sounds good.
Let's trace a trailer loaded with high-capacity lithium-ion batteries, vital components for electric vehicles.
Oh, high-stakes cargo right there.
Very high stakes. So this shipment is leaving a manufacturing plant in Ontario, Canada, and its final destination is an automotive assembly line deep in Mexico.
So it's passing straight through the United States to get there.
Exactly. It is a massive continental relay race.
A relay race is like the perfect framework for this. In this scenario, the highly volatile cargo, the lithium-ion batteries, that's the baton,
Right.
and the trucking companies, they're the runners. But the track itself is constantly morphing underneath them.
Because of the different agencies.
Precisely. Agencies like Transport Canada and Mexico's SICT function as the rule makers of their respective segments of the track. And if a carrier ignores those foreign agencies, assuming they are exempt just because they are a domestic operation,
And what happens?
well, the financial consequences are severe.
Because ignoring these rules isn't just a matter of a driver, getting a random speeding ticket. The sources make it really clear that a lack of compliance actively destroys a carrier's bottom line.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, compliance basically dictates survival in the logistics market.
How so? Like, mathematically?
Well, the regulations set by foreign transportation agencies feed directly into a carrier's public safety ratings.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and shippers review those exact ratings before they award a contract. Insurance providers use those ratings to calculate premiums.
So it's all public record, basically.
Exactly. A company that understands and integrates international standards into its fleet maintenance programs is mathematically viewed as lower risk.
Which means they save money.
Yep. They secure better freight, cheaper insurance, and steady growth.
So even if a specific driver never physically drives across the border, the company handling that freight must speak the international regulatory language or the baton gets dropped.
That's exactly it.
All right, so let's start the clock on our lithium-ion battery shipment. We are up in Ontario.
Okay, up north.
We are looking at Transport Canada. the federal department responsible for transportation policies and safety standards. But reading through the Canadian regulatory structure, I hit a massive contradiction that I really want to push back on.
I suspect I know exactly where you found a bottleneck in the text.
Yeah, because the sources explicitly state that provincial governments, so, the equivalents of U.S. states, are the ones actually enforcing the trucking rules.
Right. The provinces handle enforcement.
So the provincial police pull the trucks over, and the provincial transport ministries hand out the actual fines. If the province is doing the actual policing, isn't a federal agency like Transport Canada just like a toothless figurehead sitting in an office in Ottawa?
I mean, it definitely looks like a bureaucratic redundancy on the surface. However, Transport Canada is really the architect of the entire system.
The architect. Okay, explain that.
While the provinces are the enforcement muscle out on the highway, Transport Canada creates the national blueprint that they all enforce. Specifically, they develop and maintain what's called the National Safety Code, or the NSC.
Ugh, the NSC. I saw that mentioned frequently in the sources, but help me understand the actual mechanism here. Why does the Canadian trucking industry desperately need a federal architect?
Well, without the National Safety Code, you would have complete jurisdictional chaos.
Really? Just complete chaos?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine our truck leaving Ontario and heading west toward the Pacific. If there were no federal standard, the moment the tires crossed into Manitoba, the legal requirement for braking systems could just suddenly change.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then you cross into Saskatchewan, and the formula for calculating driver fatigue could be completely different again.
So a truck perfectly legal in one province could be
Immediately impounded at the very next weigh station, simply because the local engineering standard is different.
That paints a terrifying picture for a logistics coordinator.
Nightmare.
So if my truck is impounded in Saskatchewan because my permit doesn't match their, unique local laws, the driver is stranded. The batteries don't reach the assembly plant, and the entire production line in Mexico eventually just shuts down. Millions of dollars evaporate because of a paperwork mismatch.
Exactly. The economic damage of that fragmentation would bring interprovincial and international trade to a complete grinding halt.
So how does Transport Canada fix that?
They solve this nightmare by establishing uniform, highly specific engineering and operational standards across all Canadian provinces and territories through that NSC.
Got it. What specific mechanisms are they standardizing to prevent that friction? Because the text mentions they focus intensely on the physical metal and rubber of the vehicle, not just like administrative paperwork.
Yeah, the physical vehicle requirements are incredibly strict because Transport Canada's primary mandate is reducing preventable commercial crashes.
Right. Safety first.
Exactly. Let's look at stability control systems, for example. A semi-truck fully loaded with our lithium-ion batteries weighs up to 80,000 pounds.
That is massive.
It is. And if it hits an icy curve in the Canadian winter, the trailer can easily swing out and jackknife. So, Transport Canada mandates specific electronic stability control technology.
How does that actually work on the truck?
Basically, sensors actively detect wheel slip, and they automatically apply individual brakes to specific tires to keep the truck perfectly straight.
Oh, that's smart. And they also mandate standardized underride protection, which is something most people see on the highway but never really think about.
What you mean the steel guards?
Yeah, those heavy steel bars hanging down from the back of the trailer.
Right. Those steel guards are engineered to prevent a smaller passenger vehicle from sliding underneath the trailer and being, well, sheared off in a rear-end collision.
It's a terrifying thought.
It is. So by federally standardizing the exact tensile strength and height of those guards, Transport Canada ensures that when a U.S. carrier builds a trailer, they know the exact specifications required to legally drive it literally anywhere in Canada.
That makes so much sense. But they don't stop at the engineering of the truck, right? They aggressively regulate the human being behind the wheel, too.
Oh, absolutely. Driver fatigue remains a top cause of catastrophic highway accidents.
Right.
So to combat this, Transport Canada doesn't just suggest rest breaks. They mandate strict maximum driving hours and work cycles, and they enforce this through electronic logging devices, or ELDs.
ELDs, yeah, because before ELDs, drivers used paper logs to track their hours. And the running joke in the industry was that those logbooks were basically works of fiction.
Yeah, drivers used to call them comic books.
Comic books.
Yeah, because they could be altered to hide the fact that a driver had been behind the wheel for like 18 hours straight.
Wow.
So now, Transport Canada mandates that an ELD must be physically plugged into the engine's diagnostic port.
Oh, so it's hardwired.
Exactly. When the engine turns on and the truck moves at a certain speed, the clock starts ticking digitally. It literally cannot be altered by the driver or the trucking company.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. By strictly regulating these physical mechanisms,
Hmm?
mandating the stability sensors, standardizing the steel underride guards, hardwiring the driver's hours into the engine block, Transport Canada isn't just acting as a strict safety cop.
Right. They're doing a lot more than that.
They are actively lubricating the economic engine of North America.
Yeah, safety standardization is, at the end of the day, the ultimate trade facilitation tool.
Because it speeds things up.
Exactly. When every inspector at the border knows the exact standard a truck has been built to and maintained under, the physical inspection process speeds up exponentially.
Because if the rules are uniform, the friction basically vanishes.
Exactly.
Okay, so our truck carrying the lithium-ion batteries has successfully navigated Canada under the umbrella of the National Safety Code.
Making good time.
Yep. The driver heads south, approaches the bridge in Windsor, Ontario, and crosses into Detroit, Michigan. Now, the second the truck clears U.S. Customs, the Canadian rulebook vanishes, and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, takes over the track.
The physical baton has been passed. The carrier must now operate strictly under United States federal regulations.
Wait, so if the rulebook completely changes the minute the tires touch Michigan, does the Canadian driver suddenly need to acquire a U.S. commercial driver's license to keep moving the freight?
No, and that's the beauty of this continental system. It's all about mutual recognition.
Mutual recognition?
Yeah. Through international agreements, the FMCSA recognizes the Canadian commercial license and the medical certifications that were verified under Transport Canada's standards.
Oh, I see.
They recognize that the Canadian ELD tracking the driver's hours is capturing data that perfectly satisfies U.S. fatigue laws.
So the U.S. inspector isn't starting from scratch.
Right. The U.S. inspector knows the truck meets safety benchmarks because the Canadian and U.S. agencies constantly collaborate to harmonize their engineering requirements.
So the truck just keeps rolling seamlessly down through the American Midwest, down through the South, and eventually approaches the southern border in Texas.
And this brings us to the third leg of the relay race.
Exactly. And our second major agency. We are entering the jurisdiction of Mexico's Secretariat of Infrastructure, Communications, and Transportation.
The big one down south.
Right. But before we dive into their mechanics,
Yep.
I really need to address a confusing acronym situation in the sources.
Yeah. The industry shorthand definitely creates some friction for anyone newly researching this topic.
Right, because the sources refer to the agency as both SCT and SICT. It reminds me of a massive corporate rebranding. When a major tech company spends hundreds of millions of dollars to change their name and logo, but the consumer base just keeps calling them by the old name out of sheer habit.
That's a great comparison. Basically, the Mexican government officially added the word infrastructure to the agency's mandate.
Oh, so that's where the AVOLA came from.
Yeah, changing the acronym from SCT to SICT. But muscle memory in the logistics world is incredibly powerful. Truck drivers, border brokers, U.S. executives, they spent decades calling it SCT.
Right.
So if you are listening to a logistics earnings call and the CEO mentions clearing SCT requirements at the border, they are talking about the exact same federal agency as SICT.
Good clarification. Okay, so if Transport Canada's foundational mechanism is the National Safety Code, what is SICT's primary lever for controlling the massive flow of freight into and out of Mexico?
Well, while SICT handles driver licensing and highway safety standards, much like the FMCSA, their most critical regulatory lever is their federal permitting system.
Permitting. Okay.
Yeah, unlike the U.S., where general operating authority is pretty broad, SICT requires specific federal authorization before a carrier can legally move commercial freight on Mexico's federal highways.
And looking at the text, the permitting structure is not just a simple single document, is it?
Not at all.
To use an analogy, it functions a lot like a VIP access tier system at a massive music festival.
I like that.
Yeah, like depending on who you are and what you are carrying, you need a different colored wristband to get past the security gates.
And the bouncers in this scenario are the federal highway inspectors and the Mexican National Guard. And let me tell you, they are scrutinizing those permits intensely.
Let's expand on that. What exactly are the different tiers?
Well, at the baseline, SICT issues permits for general freight transportation.
So just normal stuff. Yeah.
Your standard dry goods, consumer products, basic palletized cargo. Then they have a separate tier for private freight transportation, which is when a company hauls its own goods rather than hiring an outside trucking firm.
Okay, got it.
But the highest tier of scrutiny, the most restricted, VIP backstage pass, is the permit for specialized freight operations,
Specialized like.
specifically the transportation of hazardous materials.
Which brings us right back to our hypothetical truck. Those lithium-ion batteries we've been tracking from Canada are highly flammable and incredibly dangerous if damaged.
Oh, yeah, they fall firmly into the hazardous materials category.
So moving that cargo must trigger SICT's most intense level of regulatory oversight.
Absolutely. To secure the hazmat permit, a carrier cannot simply fill out a basic application. They must undergo rigorous safety audits.
Wow.
Yeah, SICT dictates exactly how those volatile batteries must be packaged, labeled, and secured within the trailer to prevent, thermal runaway during transit.
Are they also dictating where the truck is physically allowed to drive?
Yes, definitely. The mechanism of routing is a massive part of SICT's hazmat oversight.
Also can't just follow a GPS blindly.
No way. A truck carrying industrial chemicals or explosive batteries cannot simply take the fastest route through a densely populated city center. SICT mandates specific approved routes along the federal highway network designed to keep dangerous cargo far away from major residential hubs and environmentally sensitive areas.
What's fascinating here is how deeply the United States economy relies on SICT functioning smoothly. Mexico is consistently one of the United States' top trading partners.
Yes, it's here.
SICT is the gatekeeper that allows that massive volume of trade to physically move.
And the text specifically highlights SICT's critical role in upholding the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or the USMCA.
The major trade pact.
Exactly. They are the engine enabling the trade pact. The industries relying on SICT's permitting efficiency are basically the foundational pillars of the North American economy.
Like which ones?
Automotive manufacturing, heavy agriculture, industrial equipment, and mass consumer electronics.
Think about the sheer scale of that dependence. If you are an American trucking company hauling finished trucks out of a plant in Texas, there is a very high probability the wiring harnesses and the computer chips inside those vehicles began their journey under the direct regulatory oversight of SICT in Mexico.
Almost guaranteed.
SICT's ability to efficiently process permits and inspect hazmat loads is literally what keeps the U.S. domestic supply chain from starving.
It's all connected.
So we have thoroughly analyzed the individual gears of this continental machine. We've seen how Transport Canada mandates physical engineering and driver tracking to prevent safety failures up north.
Right.
We've watched the FMCSA maintain the flow through the U.S., and we've seen how SICT utilizes specialized permitting to secure volatile cargo down south.
Yep.
So what does this all mean when these distinct regulatory systems actually collide at the border?
Well, the collision of these rulebooks creates intense physical choke points.
I can imagine.
The source material highlights industry discussions among logistics professionals who constantly battle specific bottlenecks during the handoff.
Let's look at the southern border for our battery shipment. Our Canadian truck isn't just going to casually drive the whole way down to the assembly plant in Monterrey, Mexico, is it?
Generally, no.
Due to complex cabotage rules.
Cabotage.
Yeah, those are laws that prevent foreign trucks from making domestic deliveries in another country.
So due to those rules and varying business practices, the freight actually undergoes a physical trailer transfer at the border.
Walk me through the mechanism of that transfer. How does a trailer transfer actually work?
Okay, so the U.S. truck pulls into a highly secure, massive commercial yard situated just north of the Mexican border.
Okay.
The driver physically unhooks the cab from the trailer holding our batteries. Then, specialized yard trucks, called yard jockeys, move the trailer through a literal gauntlet of customs inspections.
Sounds intense.
It is. Documents are verified to ensure the SICT hazmat permits are perfectly in order. Finally, a Mexican trucking company, utilizing a truck that meets SICT's federal safety standards, backs up and hooks onto that exact same trailer to complete the final leg of the journey into the Mexican interior.
Wow. But, I mean, every single step in that intricate dance is a huge vulnerability.
Absolutely.
If the U.S. driver's electronic logs show a violation of the hours of service, the trailer doesn't move.
Yep.
If the SICT specialized hazmat permit contains a clerical error, the trailer just sits in the yard.
And this raises an important question presented by the sources. What is the alternative?
What do you mean?
Like, what happens if these agencies stop actively cooperating and harmonizing their requirements?
The sources state the consequences really bluntly. Without the constant communication between Transport Canada, the FMCSA, and SICT, the bottlenecks at the borders would multiply exponentially.
It would be a disaster.
Supply chains would become significantly slower, driving up the cost of warehousing and transit. It would basically make international manufacturing fundamentally unreliable.
Yeah, these agencies provide the invisible scaffolding that millions of transportation professionals rely on every single hour to ensure the economy functions without interruption,
It completely reframes how you look at the entire concept of buying things.
doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the next time you order an electronic device online or walk into an auto parts store to buy a specialized component, just consider the sheer scale of what happened to get it to your hands.
It's incredible.
It isn't digital magic. It is a highly engineered, physically grueling, internationally cooperative relay race overseen by thousands of unseen regulators.
And, the volume of trade running along that track is expanding rapidly.
It's only getting bigger.
Exactly. The sources confirm that cross-border freight movement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico is on a continuous upward trajectory,
Wow.
which is pushing the physical infrastructure and the regulatory frameworks to their absolute limits.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to consider long after this deep dive ends. As the sheer weight and volume of North American trade forces this interconnected system to handle more strain than ever before, will the current method of harmonization be enough?
That's the big question.
Will we eventually reach a breaking point where the three nations are forced to create a single unified North American transportation rulebook just to survive?
A single rule book.
Or will Transport Canada, the FMCSA, and SICT have to invent increasingly complex, highly sophisticated technological mechanisms to translate their unique sovereign laws for one another just to keep the fragile supply chain from snapping?